weekly look at all of the hot topics in HR.
Whether it's passive talent or it's active talent.
That's a soft skill that really gets undersold in the hiring process.
How to manage in the virtual environment.
You get a diverse cultured group of people, it's a win-win for everybody.
More conversion from candidate leads.
What does that look like in this new virtual world?
Welcome to Talent Experience Live. This is the greatest show on the internet. I'm going to keep saying that every single week. I love it. I love being here. This is your weekly look at the latest and greatest topics in HR, interviews with leaders in the industry, and my personal favorite, what's new in HR tech. I'm your host, Tom Tate. I'm on the marketing team here at Phenom. Super excited to be here. I want to give a quick shout out to our producer, Justin Devitt. He's behind the scenes. He's pulling the strings, pulling the knobs, pulling the levers. Appreciate it. Couldn't do it without Justin. Also want to give a shout out to our executive producer, Jen Thomas. Jen plans out our program content. She connects with our guests. She helps with so much prep. She writes our amazing headlines, writes email copy to promote the show. The list goes on. Jen does such an amazing job. So thank you, Jen. But listen, we're not here to talk about our team. We're here to talk about your team. And I'm very excited to get into it. If you're just joining us, we go live every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We want to make sure you get notified so you never miss a beat. We love being here. We love having you here. And if you're not familiar with Phenom, Talent Experience Live is brought to you proudly by the team at Phenom. And our purpose is to help 1 billion people find the right job. That's not a typo. It is a true billion. We are well on our way, and we can't do it without our amazing, amazing community. So thank you so much. Head on over to phenom.com if you want to learn more about who we are and what we do. So we've got a great topic to cover today. Shout out in the comments if you're here, if you're joining us, no matter where you are across the globe. We're happy to have you. If you're on LinkedIn, let us know. In 2021, we spent a great deal talking about the Great Resignation. It was a popular topic. We talked about it in so many episodes, in so many blog posts, in so many reports, in so many articles. And what I want to say today is enough is enough. I'm so tired of talking about the Great Resignation. Not because it doesn't exist or not because it's not still a challenge, because we need to stop talking and we need to start doing. We need to start taking action. And that's what we're going to focus on today. From now on in 2022, whenever we talk about the Great Resignation, we're going to talk about what we're doing about it. So today's topic for TXL, we're going to cover 10 ways that you can engage employees. And I have an amazing guest with us today. He is a friend of the show, Luke Carignan. Let's bring on Luke. Luke, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Tom, I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so much for having me back. It's great to be here.
Luke, I think you are the first member of the Three Timers Club here at TXL, so we're excited. We'll get you your jacket, that you can wear, and we'll just keep putting badges on there because we want to keep having you back.
I'm impressed that you even had me back, especially after the last 2 times. I mean, I'm honored.
Hey, it was great. So, you were here last time. If our viewers recall, if you're a longtime viewer, we were rapping about our paint colors on our wall, and a couple similarities that Luke and I have. So, Luke, for everyone at home, why don't you just give the quick reminder of who you are, what you do here at Phenom?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Luke Carignan, I'm out of Roanoke, Virginia. I've been in the staffing, recruiting industry for a little more than a decade now. I come from companies like CareerBuilder, Monster. I did a stint at ADP. My not normal that I do, we all do not normals here at Phenoms. I actually own a staffing firm myself on the side. So that's my side hustle. So, I get to help folks with technology, but then also get to see, what recruiters do on a daily basis themselves and be a leader myself in the space. So I think that, gives me a unique appreciation of what a lot of the folks that we talk to on a daily basis are experiencing, what they go through, and how that translates to their everyday lives.
Yeah, I love it. I didn't know that not normal about you. I think that's the first time I've learned that you've had your own staffing agency, or you have it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Been around since like 2015. And we learned. I will tell you, my claim to fame is I've made every mistake you can possibly make in running a business. So
that's great, though. That's great. One thing I heard, I forget who, I'm going to misattribute it because I forget who I heard it from, but one of the best quotes that I heard last year was, I think it was on a podcast. Someone said, "How do you become an Olympic swimmer?" Right? How would you answer that? Right? Like probably you're thinking like, okay, what is the training regimen for an Olympic swimmer?
That's what I was thinking.
How many years? What's their diet look like? But the way that this person answered it was they get in the pool. Right. And I thought that was just so elegant and simple. Like if you want to learn, if you want to excel, you just got to get in the pool and do it. It's step number one. And love to hear that you're doing it.
It's so true. And I'll tell you the number one lesson that I've learned over the years, whether, it's working at Phenom, running my own business, things like that. And it ties into what we're going to talk about today as well, is don't recreate the wheel. Somebody else has already done it. So, you look at an Olympic swimmer. Well, what you should do is you should talk to an Olympic swimmer and ask what they did and just do that. And I feel like in business, for some reason, we try to get really creative, like, hey, we're going to innovate this new process and it's going to be awesome. Well, there's only a handful of people on earth that are going to innovate, have it hit and be really successful. The shortest way to success is just to ask somebody to mentor you, find out what they did and just go do that. And it's so simple. I wish I would have learned that years ago.
So simple. And a lot of times, those leaders will tell you it's time to get back to the basics, like focus on the basics before you try to do anything outside of the box, focus on the basics. And it's so interesting that you and I are having this conversation today where we're going to go through 10 conventional ways to engage employees. And we chose that word for a reason, right? Because last time we spoke, we talked about 10 unconventional ways to attract and hire and engage employees or engage candidates, right? And when we're thinking about this race to engage candidates, right? When we're thinking about how do we attract and hire new employees, you have to think outside of the box. But with your existing employees, you have to do the basics first. You have to focus on the core essentials. That's what employees need, and that's what employees want. So we want to focus on the bare essentials that you just need to be doing. And many of you are going to be doing these things. Maybe you have in the past and you kind of fell off a little bit. So hopefully this conversation is a good reminder of, hey, these are the things that employees really need to thrive. And I'm excited to jump into them. Luke, any thoughts or
yeah, I do have one
before we jump in.
Yeah, I do have one thought before we jump into this. And I don't think, well, first of all, none of these are going to help if you're misidentifying the problem. Right. And so when we talk, I know you don't want to talk about the Great Resignation, but I want to bring it up. So
bring it up. Let's do it.
All right. So when we look at leaders across TA, we talk to, different organizations, massive organizations out there. A lot of them will say, well, we have a retention problem. And I'd like to dial that back a little bit because, and this doesn't have to do with what we're talking about today, but to look at everything in a global perspective, a lot of times they have a hiring problem and they misclassify that as a retention problem.
Sure.
So while they're looking at this in the top 10 conventional ways, also look at the other side of things and say, well, am I diligently interviewing people? Are all of my leaders that I have and the hiring managers, are they asking questions that will best align that candidate with the core values of the organization and the long-term success that we're looking for? Because, when we get back, we mentioned before the show, the blocking and tackling, that's one of those things. So I would say before you get into this, also, look inside your organization and just make sure that the retention problem isn't a misclassified hiring problem, because I've seen that pop up in multiple cases.
Yeah. One of my favorite exercises is the 5 whys, right? Where you ask yourself, why is this such a challenge, right? And then you come up with an answer that might seem at face value to be the answer, but then you ask why again, right? And you keep doing that until you ask why 5 times, and you might be shocked, at what you or your team comes up with at the end of the 5th why, and there's a lot of great stories and a lot of great anecdotes of, people applying that approach. And I think this is totally one of those opportunities. Yeah.
And people find out, if they look at that hire and they're like, okay, well, let's put together a scorecard for incoming candidates, for example, make sure they're being hired by the values. What we're about to go over in this episode is going to be so much easier and so much effective if that problem is already, taken out of the equation. So I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So let's jump in. We're going to hit these really fast, right? We're going to go through the top 10. We're not going to spend a ton of time with these, but join in the chat. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know what your teams are doing, right? Keep us posted. And then bring these conversations back to your team and think about ways that you can improve the employee experience, improve the employee culture through a couple of these quick hits, right? So number one, and it speaks to understanding the problem, right? It's seek employee feedback consistently and often. You can't support your employees' needs if you don't know what those needs are, right? And you can't build a personal connection if you don't know the person, right? So I love this idea of soliciting feedback, whether it's through surveys, right? Or whether it's through and they don't have to be boring surveys. They can be fun. They can be engaging. There's a lot of exciting ways that you can do that. But I think this is number one, is you have to seek first to understand. You have to ask. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on employee feedback? How do you think we can best approach this at our organizations?
Well, I mean, that's the compass of what problem we're looking to solve, right? I mean, leaders can sit around all day and guess what problems would be fun to solve or guess what the organization needs. But really, we don't know. We don't know what our team members are thinking or, what's going on around the water cooler, right? So to keep it simple, I always say, look for patterns. And the simplest way to do that is when you hear something 3 times, that's a pattern at that point. It's not once, it's not twice, it's 3 times. We look at net promoter scores and, companies that are obsessed with customer service and making their companies better in the marketplace, gaining market share, et cetera. They're truly obsessed with these numbers and they follow that exact same principle. When they hear something 3 times, they investigate it. And if it's an actual problem that needs to be solved, then they'll put resources towards that. It's the exact same thing when we look internally with our team. So I think, if companies would, even maybe go over to their teams that are looking at, product quality, service quality on the external side of the business, they could learn a ton of processes that are literally already in place. They again don't need to recreate the wheel. Recognize patterns, put resources towards it, and solve it. You'll be shocked what you hear and maybe how simple they are to solve.
Yeah, and the old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And I think you'll hear your most vocal employees voicing their concerns, and like when you think about looking for those patterns, those trends, a lot of them are going to come from your vocal employees. Not everyone's wired that way, to be vocal, to be outspoken, to, voice their concerns. So that's where I think soliciting full team feedback is critical, because you'll really start to engage the members of your teams that are not as vocal, right? And Pixar, great company. There's a great book called Creativity Inc. by one of the founders of Pixar. And he talks about a lot of the things that they did to really build transparent and candid culture. One of the things that they had is a day called Notes Day, where they shut down work for the entire day, no business, and everyone, no matter what your role was, no matter what your seniority was, you were engaged to help suggest and brainstorm new ways of working, new solutions to challenges that the whole company is facing. And I really love that idea of just involving the whole organization, and I think that there's opportunities, no matter what level your organization is at, to start to work some of that into your practices, starting with this first item of seeking employee feedback consistently and often. Number 2, Luke, encourage employees to explore their interests. So you have a side hustle that you've revealed earlier. I'm sure you have other interests. How important do you think this is? And what are some of the benefits that people might not even realize start to come to fruition when employees do these things?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, look at the other stuff I have going on. I have my own podcast outside of Phenom as well. And now I get to, take that passion that I have outside and bring it to TXL and talk to you, for example, and that's super important to me as a team member. I don't know, to be able to bring that to the table and share that passion in what I do. And, something I'll bring up is, about like our CEO, Mahi Bayeretti. If you talk to Mahi, he's not going to talk about like work-life balance, right? He's going to look at it more from a perspective of work-life integration. And he's 100% right about thinking about it that way. Flexibility towards work-life balance kind of means that both of them are separate, but where the true happiness comes in and you get people staying or when they hit that magical flow of being able to integrate both, what they love to do, what they're passionate about, and what they can make money at. And when we look at, internal organizations, explore your interests, things like that, people are looking for information, right? And if they don't get the information internally, they're going to go find it externally. Well, we've learned companies are really good at advertising opportunities externally, not so great at doing it internally. So as humans, we're just going to go out and find that information that we can. That's where the slippery slope comes in and where people start to pay attention to other companies, where it's such an easy fix to give them that information, to give them that path. Like one of the things that you had mentioned in here is, offering gigs to upskill or try something different, right? How much do you value a company that you work for that says, you know what, you share our same values. We want you as part of our internal community. You make all of us better. We just need to get you in the right seat on the bus. And here's your opportunities to go explore that, see what you like, see what you don't. Maybe the position you're in is perfect and the other position you're looking at just isn't for you. I can think of tons of things at Phenom that I'd be absolutely horrible at, but they sound, kind of sexy to me though.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think, this idea of internal gigs really allows you to bring some of your passions, your hobbies to the job. Think of if somebody is an amateur photographer and that's their hobby and they're really getting into it and they're showing amazing work, there's no reason why that individual shouldn't be taking photographs at your next big events. If in your case, Luke, you are one of your core hobbies is podcasting. There's no reason that you shouldn't be taking that passion and joining me on TXL. These are the things that are unlocked when we invite our employees to bring their passions and bring their obsessions and bring their side gigs to the job. And there's a lot of creative ways that you can do this. Another thing too, if you feel, if let's say you get pushback, that oh, that's not bringing enough value to the business, you can argue that, right? But we won't get into that argument. One thing that I've seen is hackathons, or basically putting a day together or a weekend together where you're going to creatively attack a problem that is valuable to the business. And you're going to bring cross-functional teams together, so now you have marketers getting exposed to engineering, right? And engineering getting exposed to marketing in all different new ways, so there's a lot of creative things that you can do once you head down this path. Speaking of paths, right? Number 3, we've been talking about this a ton in the past couple of years. You have to be diligent in providing a career path. And it can't be just something on paper. It has to be actionable. It has to be multi-layered, right? You have to be able to show any employee that not only do they have a future at your organization, but they have agency, they have options, they have a clear path. We've identified the skills that they need to get from point A to point B. We're providing them with the resource to get those skills. These are all critical in helping keep our employees engaged. Because like you said, there's so many opportunities out there and your competitors are aggressive at advertising those opportunities. So when it comes to creating and providing those, what are you seeing, in your personal life, but then also in your professional life, that is really helping to change the game here?
Yeah, what I'm seeing is the companies that are doing this the best today with career path aren't necessarily creating a path that you would think of as a career. What they're doing is they're actually recognizing the life journey of somebody and that needs hierarchy of what they're going to have, right? So what does a good career mean? Well, it's kind of more complex than just answering that question in a simple way. What a good career means is that different things are going to be more important to you at different times in your life. So when you're starting off at like an entry-level position, it might be location. Maybe you want to be in a big city with friends, right? Maybe you want a lot of peers around you and you want to network a lot, right? As you go on, let's say, you're starting a family, you might need more things. Having a good career or a good job is different, right? A career means you can afford a decent car, right? You can afford to put food on the table for your family. And as you progress in life and things grow and your responsibilities grow, those needs are going to change as well. So the companies that are really doing a great job at this, they're recognizing that and aligning that career path to reflect where somebody might be. That's their target audience or who they're going for to fill those positions and what they will need at that point in their life. And, as we get older and more experienced, you can think about it. Well, the career path that we have you on, this role is going to require more experience. Well, organizations that are doing a great job at retaining people are painting that picture. They're saying, Tom, here's where you're at today. Here's our business plan. And here's where we're going to be 10 years from now. And now you're automatically going to be thinking to yourself, wow, well, where am I going to be in 10 years if that's the growth trajectory of this company that I'm with right now? That's what keeps people there. So when they think about career pathing, it's not necessarily as linear as most people would think it is. It's not like, okay, I'm going to a level 1, level 2, level 3. What they're doing is putting in what flexible options people would need or what they might require at that point in their life.
Yeah. And the crazy thing too, these days is we have access to technology.
Yep.
Right. That can take these massive data sets, right? Things that any human wouldn't be able to make sense of at face value, right? You have these massive data sets where you can analyze the movement of thousands and thousands of employees, where we might think it's a linear path, but when you're analyzing the data and you're analyzing the movement of employees, you might see, oh, wow, that's actually more common than we thought,
That's true.
Having this UX designer move to a junior development role, right? Or a junior development role moving to a UX designer. You might think they're not really associated, right? But when you're looking at all the movement, when you're looking at the skills that are required for those different roles, the overlap of skills, the gaps that you can fill, we can use technology to really paint the picture of the options, right? Not the linear path, but the options. And we can present that in a way that's engaging and in a way that shows and provides that visibility to the employee that, if you want to stay here and thrive here, there are multiple directions you can go in. And once you have that in front of you, it's really just the start of the conversation,
Right.
and it's a great conversation for any manager or managee to really start to dig into and have. So the stuff that we're seeing with technology, especially here on the Phenom side, to enable those conversations and enable that mobility has been fantastic. Go ahead, Luke. I can tell you.
I was just going to say, it can be so simple too.
Yep.
I hear companies overcomplicating career pathing all the time. It could be as simple as an executive, like I said earlier, going out and say, here's our 5-year and here's our 10-year plan. And here's where we're going to be. If you can get your team members picturing where they're going to be at that point in time, that's going to be very important to them. And they're going to remember that, especially when other opportunities come up and they're evaluating whether or not they want to stay.
Yeah. So the next 3 items we're going to run through are really built to help get your employee there. Once you give them the visibility and you have that conversation, how are you going to get them there? Right. And there's a couple different ways. One that is incredibly important is connecting peers with other peers. You're not going to get there alone. Employees are not going to get from point A to point B on their own. Right. So there's a ton of different things that we can do to connect peers with peers. We are huge proponents of employee resource groups, right? Which can be related to, different groups within your organization. They can be related to interest groups. They don't have to just be related to, on the job things, and we see that here as well. And it's a great way to just connect like-minded employees and get those conversations started. It's incredibly important now that many of us are remote working, and need to, onboard new employees, but provide them with an experience where they're getting to know their peers are getting to know them. How do we create the rooms? How do we create the virtual water coolers, to be able to do that? Luke, has your team done anything significant or anything that you've really appreciated to kind of maintain that connection between you and your peers?
Oh yeah. Well, Phenom is awesome at this. I mean, ever since I joined a few years ago, they've been amazing. So you have a few things listed here. Number one that I'd like to call out are the not normals. And for listeners that don't know, our motto here is not normal. We're not a normal company. It's totally true. But what we do is when we meet people as like an icebreaker, we tell people weird things about ourselves. Right. So I think on one episode I said I used to work at Red Lobster. That was a not normal. My feet are as wide as they are long. I have trouble buying shoes. That's another not normal. And I like identify with my peers still to this day, even years ago, with the not normals that they said, and it brings us closer together. You have fun Slack channels written here. Like we have the Phenom Dogs. Like I sit here as just like on a, during the day and I see the Phenom Dogs channel. I just like looking at other people's dogs and just like fun stuff that they cook on like the cooking channel. It really helps quite a bit. And, I've developed, not only great professional relationships, but personal relationships with this company too. And I'm very happy, and fortunate that I've come up with some great friends that I think will be lifelong friends from the organization.
Yeah.
And it's just from, connecting people with technology that I think Phenom does, a great job at it, like I said, but yeah. It's so important. It's so easy to do.
Yeah. My favorite fun Slack channel, Luke, I don't know if you're in this one, but Overheard.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a great one. Yeah. So just out of context quotes from Zoom meetings and from your peers, other Slack channels, really fun one to be in. So connecting peers with peers, super critical. But for every individual, there's going to be the one or two people that are really going to be invested in pushing them forward and helping them get to the next step. Here at Phenom, we think of those people as mentors. There's also a concept of a sponsor. We had a great episode, where we were talking about the differences between a mentor and a sponsor. I'll try to dig up the link and throw it in the notes here. But super important that we make those connections, those strategic connections, those personal connections, to show employees that, hey, we are very committed to your success. And it doesn't always mean it's going to be your manager, right? And it doesn't always mean that it's going to be inside the organization too. Like your mentor could be outside of the organization. But
absolutely,
if your company, if your organization is making the effort to help you discover that mentor and cultivate that relationship and build on that relationship, it goes a long way. And it's an easy thing to do, right? It's really just about understanding the needs of the employee in relation to the path that we talked about, right? And then understanding who at the organization can provide that feedback, that mentorship. I'm sure you've seen this, Luke, here at in your Phenom days and even prior to, maybe not so much at Red Lobster, but who knows? But yeah, like I'm curious, how's your experience been kind of not only discovering mentors, but helping to be a mentor or hook other people up with mentors as well?
Yeah, so I still do both. So I'm a mentor to a few folks here at Phenom that are just coming in as fresh salespeople into the organization. I absolutely love it. For me, I'm like a mentoraholic. I don't know if that's a word, but what I do, it is now. Yeah. So I like to find multiple mentors and just pick out what they're really, really good at.
Yeah.
And then I want that trait, and I just come out and tell them like, hey, take me under your wing, show me how you do this. You're awesome at it. And I'm going to be better at it. And everyone's so helpful. I've never had anybody tell me no. In Phenom, outside of Phenom, I love that you mentioned that too, because I've probably brought on about 5 more. I've brought on 5 personal mentors for myself, even outside of Phenom, just since October. And
yeah,
they are amazing. I'm talking C-levels at other companies, and you'd be shocked at how like a quick email to them, they're just willing to help. I've never had somebody tell me no. Maybe knock on wood. Maybe it'll happen after this episode. But I can think of, 3 mentors at Phenom that I have right now personally, and I'm happy to pay it forward as well.
Yeah. And, you're going to have within your employee base, you're going to have those self-motivated folks like Luke here, who's going to seek out mentorship, right?
Yep.
And do it in a way where you're going to understand your strengths and weaknesses. And you're going to say, hey, this is one of my weaknesses. This person has it as a strength. I'm going to connect with that person. I'm going to build this relationship. That person is going to help take me to the next level. You're not going to have that DNA in every employee. So this is where the proactive nature of being able to identify and have those conversations and say, hey, we want to see you progress to the next stage in your career. These are the areas you need to work on. these individuals will help you get there. And it goes back to the first point, seeking first to understand, asking the right questions, soliciting feedback. You're going to have quiet employees, and if you want to keep them engaged, you have to have conversations. And this is part of it. One of the core values here that I really resonate with, Luke, is curiosity.
Oh yeah.
Here at Phenom, and we've done such a good job at Phenom of building up a culture of curiosity, and I think it ties really well to building up a culture of learning as well. So number 6 on our list was promote that culture of learning and curiosity. It's one of the best ways that you can really keep employees engaged in leveling up and keeping employees engaged in pushing the mission of your company even further and further, and asking the right questions and learning the right things. We had a couple items on the list that we discussed. You want to run us through a couple ideas of how you can start to promote this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you called out curiosity. I mean, the only barrier to success that I see in every single position, and this is across the board, is information. The more information that you have, the more successful you're going to be. And that's a rule that'll just stand, for all time. It works in absolutely everything. So, you put a few things in here like host learning and development shows, right? Have different department heads lead each month. Show people what it's like working in that division, the exciting things, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Show them everything. Give them that information. And then you have, engage senior leaders to share their career paths as well. That's huge. That humanizes who the executives are, because they were in the same position as we were at one point, and they worked their way up to that. And for them to be able to illustrate that to future team members as well and get them to envision them working towards that goal as well. We don't get enough of that in the world today.
Yeah.
And I think that really impacts people. I remember things like from decades ago that I just heard in trainings that have resonated with me and still remember them today.
Likewise, it's those lessons you learn from the people who've done the things that you want to do already. Like they've come before us, they've done the things, and they're teaching us. One other concept that I learned about, early last year was the concept of reverse mentoring, which requires a culture of curiosity. And that's really the idea that, like, typically when we think of mentoring, we think of, you have your senior leaders mentoring your more junior folks, right? Reverse mentoring flips that. And it basically says, like, hey, our senior folks, they have a lot that they could be learning from our colleagues who are new to the workforce.
Yep.
Especially when we think about the differences between digital natives, right? And analog natives, so many of us have grown up in an analog world. We got our first cell phone when we were in high school, and now we have digital natives who grew up practically with a tablet, by their side. They can teach me personally, like, what is it about TikTok that is engaging from a marketing perspective, right? Like, they see it in a different way. They learn in a different way because of how they grew up, and because of their relationship to technology. So I don't need to mentor them in those areas. They need to mentor me, and it's that idea of openness and kind of having that reverse mentoring possibility. And it requires that culture of curiosity. You have to stay curious no matter what stage of the game you are in.
Yep.
Cool. So moving on to number 7 here. So just a couple left. Ask employees to share their story, their unique employee story. And great segue from what you just said about, senior leaders sharing their career path, right? Everyone has a unique story to tell. And there's some great ways that we can capture these. We have a feature here at Phenom called Video Capture, where you can basically just send out a campaign to say, let us know how your remote working experience has been, or let us know what drew you to Phenom, or let us know a little bit about how you progressed from your last role to your current role. And it's just a prompt, right? It's just opening up the opportunity for your employees to tell their story in their own words. And once you have that on video, I mean, the sky's the limit. Like, you can use that on your career site. You can use that during onboarding. You can take quotes. You can build on an amazing story and maybe create a podcast episode or create a larger video from it. So there's so much possibility that you can do once you start to unlock some of those stories. And most humans are wired to be storytellers. We
They
like
are.
we like to talk about ourselves, to
Yep.
some extent. And when the doors open, if given the opportunity to tell stories, we often do it, and we do a good job at it. Um, any thoughts on this one, Luke, or you want to just keep moving?
Yeah, let's keep moving. That was well said. I don't
Yeah.
know if I can't add any value to that. That was perfect.
You can add value to the next one because I know that you've had quite a few conversations about the power of referrals, right?
Oh my gosh,
So
yes.
one amazing way to just engage employees, and honestly, we probably covered this in our last conversation, the power of referrals. Recruit your employees to recruit. And you can incentivize them, but it goes beyond incentivization. It goes beyond the incentive. I think there's a deeper value that we provide when we give our employees the opportunity to grow the quote unquote family, to grow the organization. Luke, any thoughts on, recruiting via referrals, in your conversations these days?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's everyone's responsibility in the company to recruit.
Yep.
Absolutely everybody. I think of a story, I do love stories. One of the former CEOs of Aon, huge company out of Chicago, would ask everyone he meets, whether internally, externally, didn't matter. He was famous for saying, "Who do you know that should come work for us?" And he would pretty much start every single conversation that way. And he built one of the greatest companies on earth, one of the most profitable organizations that's out there. And that was his motto. He said, it's everybody's responsibility to recruit. And that's always resonated with me. And it's so easy because all you have to do is ask. People naturally want to help other people.
Yeah.
So like if you go to somebody, just try it. Go, hey, name 3 people that should come work for us. I bet they just tell you 3 people. It's that easy. You have, 1,000 people in your company. There's 3,000 leads. There you go.
Yeah, and we definitely talked about that last time.
Yep.
I remember going through this with you. So again, huge opportunity to not only grow your employee base, but also engage your employee base. Number 9 and 10. This is where I drew the line and said, "There's nothing unconventional about these. There's nothing outside of the box. These are bare necessities. These are the essentials." Number 9, show your employees that you care. Right? Don't just say it. Show it. A couple things that we talked about, send thoughtful care packages.
Yep.
We're all going through different challenges, right? We're also celebrating amazing things, right? So we have employees in one of our Slack channels. Every time an employee welcomes a new addition to their family, we all celebrate. I mean, we get a beautiful picture of the new child, and then everyone celebrates. Everyone comes in. And I think that's just so thoughtful, and I think every organization has an opportunity to look at what's happening in people's personal lives, and support them through the good and the bad, and I think that a lot of companies handle this really well. I think a lot of companies just choose to back off, right? And I think that can be a crutch when you're trying to keep employees engaged. What are some of your favorite things, to just show employees and show your teams that you care?
I mean, everyone loves swag, right? Everyone
That's right.
loves
Yep.
swag. But I
Got
mean,
it right now.
birthdays, we did a focus group on some employees a few months ago and asked them, we said, "Hey, when's the last time your company told you happy birthday?"
Yeah.
All of them just shook their head and said, "No, the company has never told me happy birthday." And I'm like, what? This is the simplest thing you can do. And the goal goes to some of our basic needs as humans, which kind of goes into our next one too. But it's what you're doing is you're creating a community. Now look outside of work, how people flock to community. Religion, all 100% based on community.
Yep.
You look at political beliefs based on community, and actually political communities are actually fascinating to me because people think we're all so different. And when you look at the news, yeah, we're all different. What we find is people are actually the same.
Yeah.
So when you look at a poll, right, and you say, all right, Virginia, 2% of the vote is in and we're calling it for this candidate, right? Well, how
Right.
can 2% of the vote be in and we're calling it for that? It's because communities are so predictable and tightly knit that you can actually predict it just on 2%. So think about how impactful that is if you can create that type of community around your organization. I mean, that should be the goal. These might seem like little things to do. Happy birthday, send them a jacket, whatever it might be. Make sure they have pens and paper on their first day. I don't know. It creates community, and that's the ultimate goal. So people need to not lose sight of that. It's not just a piece of swag. It's not just a happy birthday. You are creating a community, and that's where you get the results from that.
Yeah, and just thinking off the cuff, going back to the first question around surveying and asking questions of your employees, those surveys are oftentimes just so dry because they're so direct. What do you think about our PTO policy? What do you think about our parental leave policy? What are some ways that we can improve work-life balance? It's very HR centric, right?
Yep.
You should sneak in a question on your next survey. What's your favorite snack?
See, I like that. Yeah.
What's the best song you heard in the past 2 weeks? Best new song you heard in the next. Throw a question in there that just shows your employees that you're interested in them as people, not just interested in how they feel about your HR function, right?
Yep.
And I think in doing that, perfect segue to number 10, which is just be human, right? It opens the door for us to just be human, right? And understand that every employee is a unique individual with a favorite snack and a favorite song and challenges at home and birthdays coming up and things to celebrate. And once we really start to integrate that into our day-to-day engagements, I think that's when we start to open up the opportunity for us to be human in a very two-way nature.
Yep.
The not normals that you mentioned earlier are another great way of doing that, right? Because it forces us to be human and vulnerable and unique, and just put that out on the table, and people connect with that, so lots of different ways to be human. Obviously that could be its own podcast, that we could run for infinity, because we're still understanding what it means to be human. But in the workplace, what are some ways that you appreciate, that being exercised?
Oh, I can break this down into 2 questions. Every leader should ask every team member. Number 1, what motivates you? Number 2, what's important to you? And what we've discovered is that a lot of leaders think they know, but they've never actually really asked that question. So let me give you a couple examples. What motivates you? For some people, it might just be money. For some people, it might be recognition. Both of those are totally easy to execute on. You can figure that out and you can be successful with that relationship with that individual. You just have to know where your target is. And then the second one, what's important to you? This is where it gets kind of complex, but also super easy to solve. There's a story where I was interviewing a CEO, and she had a lot of team members on her team that are women, right? So she went out and said, this is later on in career, well, what's really important to you? And they came back and said, well, I want to be there to pick up my kids from school, and I want to be able to have a full weekend. And it seems like sometimes, I'm working so hard that my work just bleeds into the weekend. It just seems kind of short. She said, okay, well, we're going to do the exact same activity. Our results are still going to be the same, but what I'm going to do for you is, instead of working till 5, we're going to do 8 to 4 and out the door, she called it.
Yeah.
And then half day Fridays. And she goes,
amazing.
Go do all of your errands that second half of the day on Friday. That way you get to enjoy a full weekend. What she actually discovered is productivity went up quite a bit. Retention went up quite a bit. She was able to attract more employees to come in because people were talking about that and inviting their friends in to come into this too. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning as well with work-life integration. So something so simple, be human. Do you know the answer to those 2 questions for each individual that's on your team? And if you don't, I mean, what an awesome place to start. And that'll probably keep you busy, for months, figuring out a really fun way to make that better.
Yeah. And I want to ask too, for all those following along, in the chat, if you want to share your answers to those 2 questions or one of those 2 questions, I think that'd be great, just to hear from our audience, just share, what motivates you and what might be important to you. Right. And I think once again, it's all about seeking to understand our employees, on a professional and personal level. Once we can do that, it unlocks the opportunity for us to do some amazing things, to keep them engaged, and to keep them on the right path.
So simple. So simple.
So
Tom, we just went through like 10 ways that I feel like somebody could take these and go implement them tomorrow. Like I'm getting kind of jacked up on, I'm getting excited about these.
I'm super excited. I was just about to recap them, right? So we're going to recap these, but if you weren't listening or you tuned out and tuned back in and you're just catching the recap, like listen, if you're in talent management, or if you are a manager, or you want to be a manager, or you're just interested in getting your team to the next level, like take these to your team, take these to your HR team and said, hey, I checked out this awesome thing with Tom and Luke. They went through these 10 things. Let's talk about these, right? So number 1, seek employee feedback consistently and often. Number 2, encourage employees to explore their interests, bring those to work. Provide actionable career pathing, number 3. Number 4, connect peers with peers. Number 5, match your employees with a mentor or sponsor. Number 6, promote a culture of learning and curiosity. Number 7, ask employees to share their unique story. Number 8, recruit employees to help recruit. All about referrals there. Number 9, show employees that you care. And absolutely critical, number 10, just be human. Be human in these topsy-turvy times that we're living through. More important than ever. Luke, any final thoughts before we wrap up today's show?
Yeah, I will say, our job is all to be recruiters, right? So
Yeah.
Leaders, employees, if you're not getting this from your organization right now, I can promise you that we're doing it at Phenom. So the grass is greener. It's worth a conversation. Hit us up, Luke@phenompeople.com, and we will get you an interview to come in, because I think we do a good job at checking these boxes. And, we may not be all the way there yet, but for me, our leaders here do try really hard. And for me, that goes a very, very, very long way.
I'm a huge believer that leadership begets leadership, right?
Yep.
And we have that here. So I totally second that, Luke. Head on over to phenom.com, hit that careers page if you want to see what we have available here. We don't usually promote our open jobs here at Phenom, but Luke's bringing up a great point.
I just did. Yeah.
We should, right? We should all be recruiters. Amazing. Well, thank you all for joining Luke and I today on Talent Experience Live. We're here every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be here next week. We're happy to have you. Thank you so much for engaging in the chat. We really appreciate that as well. We can't do this without the audience. We wouldn't do this without the audience. So thank you for showing up. We'll be here next week. Luke, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me on, Tom.
And for all those who joined in, appreciate your time and attention. It's your currency. You're just giving it to us. Thank you so much. We hope you have a safe and amazing weekend, and we'll catch you on the next episode.